everyone, so this is me talking you through The Great Gatsby and all of our creative decisions. Now, throughout Gatsby, it's obvious that there are many scenes that present themselves, but I feel there's not a single theme that tends to resonate more than with the audience than the theme of debauchery and the corruption and greed associated with it. I feel like greed and debauchery is shown no better than through the hotel scene with Myrtle and Tom. It's obviously an intentionally raunchy scene with expensive bright colours and extravagant patterns. Myrtle herself doesn't have a lot of money, but she dresses like she does. This disguise, as well as fooling around with Tom, is such a thrilling experience for her that she thinks she deserves. And Tom loves the chase with Myrtle, but is always looking over his shoulder in stress, as seen here in this waist-up camera angle. He uses his money to give her whatever she wants, like the dog here, so that he can get whatever he wants. Nick is very clearly very uncomfortable here, and the contrast between the bright red ornate room and Nick's brown suit was a deliberate decision. It's to demonstrate how much of a stranger Nick is to this lifestyle. Also, side note, the paintings printed on the furniture is The Swing by Jean-Honoré Fragonard, and the painting is historically symbolic of infidelity and debauchery. So the implementation of this painting shows to the audience that yes, this whole trip and that specific room was chosen for the sake of overindulgence and debauchery at the expense of other people. Nick's discomfort with these people becomes evident with the very fast dolly zoom and non-diegetic screech towards Catherine in the doorway.
Ain't we having a party?
A close-up shot of Nick's face, showing his pupils dilating after swallowing the pill, shows the sheer debauchery and overindulgence of not only him but everyone else around him. Myrtle and her friends, especially Catherine, have such a fierce and explosive vitality. All of them are incredibly bold and have clearly done this a million times before, and the viewer can feel their confidence. When Nick eventually does cave, the rapid camera angles and fast, stressful tracking shots cut back and forth between him and the other characters. This was done so that the audience is like, what is going on here? And it shows how quickly someone can fall into this lifestyle with a little bit of influence. The characters are sweaty and soaked in champagne and spit probably, and they're kissing and swaying and dancing. And these camera angles and costume choices make the audience uncomfortable and confused, like they are in that moment with them. But the audience is presumably sober, so this is a little awkward for them, which is just like Nick felt at the beginning of the scene. So we combine this with the out-of-place, non-diegetic I Can't Stop song, and it intensifies the scene further, making what they're doing even more energetic. With a club banger in the background, of course it is. When Nick is on the balcony looking at himself in his inebriated state, this is a moment of clarity, and he's kind of just there in the scene to appease, looking within and looking without. He doesn't really know what he wants and whether he likes this debauchery. A fast zoom out of the whole of New York explains that Nick is only a small percentage of the masses of people with secrets engaging in such immoral activities that would seem vile to the general public. And the lower class who can't even afford to dream about having such exclusivity look up in complacency. Now, the first party scene is the first time we as the audience are not only introduced to the world of Gatsby, but the mystery of who the great Mr. Gatsby actually is solved. The line,
I decided to get roaring drunk,
shows how much, like the hotel scene, Nick has leaned into this dissipation of the people around him. And if you look at every single one of Gatsby's guests, they have some elaborate guise that's like shimmering, glittering, and that somehow screams, look at me! And all of these people come to this party, uninvited mind you, and overindulge in and abuse Gatsby's wealth and generosity. But is it actually generosity, or is it just another ulterior motive? When we first meet the real Gatsby, he's unveiled in the most satisfying way a character can possibly be unveiled. This explosion behind him here and the diegetic crescendo create this larger-than-life atmosphere about Gatsby. We use this slow-motion shoulder-level camera angle so the audience feels exactly like Nick in this situation, and we see exactly what Nick is seeing. This is our first impression, as the audience, of Jay, and he is young, he blends into the crowd to remain inconspicuous. This is very much unlike everyone else in extravagant outfits and bling and glitter, all drawing attention to themselves. This proves to the audience that even though he is very wealthy, Gatsby sets the stage for debauchery, and he only has a desire for one thing, and that is a life with Daisy. Gatsby isn't like the others. He doesn't get roaring drunk, he doesn't dance around and kiss everyone he sees, but he still sets the stage for all of this to happen, so he still is part of this. Now, Tom, on the other hand, is almost a caricature of greed, and it's cushioned by his wealth. He is so rich, yet he still wants more and more. He wants Daisy and Myrtle. He wants to be seen as great, but not the polo player. Visual colour symbolism was incredibly important to the production of the film to show each character's, true colours. When we first meet Tom, everything about him is blue. His eyes, his clothes, his trophy room. And if you look here, this blue is symbolic of wealth and like inhumane like wealth and the ungratefulness and corruption associated with it. In this scene here, when we first go to his trophy room, lots of fast-paced waist shots cut back and forth between Tom and Nick, and they make the viewer incredibly anxious, and this shows how overwhelmingly wealthy Tom is. This richness is Tom's entire personality, and he even says he doesn't want to be known as a polo player, which is, to be honest, the only real interesting about him in the film, other than his, well, rather controversial opinions of people of colour. Tom almost always wears a blue suit too. Now Gatsby is also obviously very wealthy, but you notice that there's almost nothing blue about him. He never wears a blue suit. The only blue thing he has is his eyes and his extremely blue swimming pool that he dives in. This means that Gatsby, to his core, is very wealthy. However, it's not who he sees himself to be, because he accumulated all his wealth for Daisy. And he doesn't really engage in this debauchery like Tom does very much. So we saturated this blue in post-production to really emphasize this point to the viewer and to associate blue with the film.